What's going on, Junkie Nation? Gorgeous George and Goes are back with another superstar from the sport of mixed martial arts. We're lucky to talk to former UFC middleweight champion, current one championship vice president, Rich Franklin. What's up, Rich? How are you?
What you guys going? What's going on? I tell you what, if I'm your standard for good luck, then man, your day is going to be terrible today.
Yeah, well, I have to take it slow because tons of accolades. You've done so much in the sport. You're definitely a legend. And then how about this? You guys served me this up on a platter. We're going to talk about one on Prime, one Moraes versus Johnson 2, and one championship, 160 Lee versus Tang. So, yeah, man, you got to get it all right. You know what I mean? You guys got two big shows coming up on Friday. How jacked are you? You're in Singapore.
Yeah, actually, I flew down here for this. I'll be commentating or helping commentate. I'm not the lead commentator for the one on Prime Video event. And so we have two events this weekend, actually. We have a Friday night event that's headlined by Christian Lee versus Okray Yoon. A little bit of controversy in the last matchup between those two guys. That will air Asia prime time on this side of the planet. But then we also have a Saturday morning show, Asia time, that will air US prime time on the East Coast. And that is the rematch between Adrian Moraes and Demetrious Johnson. So we have two rematches this weekend, and I'm pretty jacked to not only watch these fights but to help commentate with them.
I remember in your career you fought in Vegas plenty of times, so it's a 7 p.m. start over here. Back east, even in your hometown, Cincinnati, 10 p.m. start time there, and then overseas when you had to go to the UK, a whole different thing. How much does this throw off the morning guys? Can they get used to it, or does it still mess with you?
I always tell people that when I was competing for a match, it takes you 1 day for every time zone that you travel to get the body to adjust. So if, for example, in Asia here, I'm a complete 12-hour split from the East Coast time zone. So if I was going to compete here, I would want to arrive at least 12 days ahead of my match. And that's a bit problematic because you want to stay in your routine, in your groove of things. And anytime you travel, you have to bring everything with you. You have to, I was cutting weight at the time. We have our hydration policies over here, but I would want to stay as self-contained with my food as possible. You need to bring your training partners. So competing on another side of the planet can become quite tricky with the logistics of things.
Rich, you also are going to get to commentate. Well, the one thing about one championship is the beauty of the hybrid cards, where there's Muay Thai and grappling and MMA. Do you get jacked over one over the other, or are they kind of all the same now just because of the competitive juices and the competition between the high-level athletes that are competing?
No, it's when it comes to commentating, because I'm calling what I see in the fights, and I really enjoy doing that. And it doesn't really matter if I'm watching, for example, a grappling match or if I'm watching an MMA match. Actually, and I talked about this before, I wasn't a fan when One Championship talked about, like when Chatri started talking about doing Muay Thai matches and kickboxing matches in the MMA cards. I was like, nah, I was an MMA purist, and that's kind of ironic to say because MMA is a mix of a bunch of stuff. But when we started doing these Muay Thai matches on the cards, I was like, this just is no. People show up to watch MMA matches, and we had our first event with the Muay Thai match, and I was like, this was pretty good. I liked it, but I didn't want to like it. I didn't want to admit that I liked it. And just several cards later, the events that we had with the Muay Thai matches, particularly because you see a level of striking that's beyond that of MMA. And so calling those kind of matches and seeing the way that these guys or girls, for that matter, work in the ring, in the circle is pretty cool. So yeah, it doesn't matter. I like calling the kickboxing, the Muay Thai matches. I will say this though, I'm not a fan of scoring the Muay Thai matches on air because I don't have a ton of experience with it yet. So sometimes I get uncomfortable throwing my scores out there.
Yeah, totally understand that one. Tell me about the Lee family. So often have they been the champions, so everyone's adjusting to them. Everyone's chasing them down. And as you noted earlier, in the main event of One Championship 160, Christian Lee is going to be the challenger. And what do you know about the Lee family and the ability to make adjustments coming off a loss?
Coming off of a loss, I've known the Lee family for several years now because obviously Angela was the first one that came into the organization. I can't remember when her what year her first fight was, 2017 maybe, I think. And so, the one thing about the Lee family is that they're a very tight unit. They use each other for training partners, but it's interesting how Ken, their father, Angela and Christian's father, is kind of at the helm of the ship there, and he does an amazing job of setting up game plans and making adjustments as needed. And you can see this just when you watch them work in the corner, the communication that's between the two of them, the synergy. There's definitely a connection that I would say typically maybe a coach and an athlete doesn't have. And so it is something pretty cool to watch. I think I always jokingly say that Ken is one of those guys who, like, when he was having kids, I think like he kind of like genetically engineered them. I always remember the movie Soldier with Kurt Russell, where he was just pretty much designed to be a soldier. And that's kind of what this entire family is, because I mean, you have Angela that came in the league, now Christian, they've both been champions. And then their younger sister now is starting to make her way up as well. And so, it wouldn't shock me if several years from now we see her as reigning champion in a weight class.
And then if you could talk a little bit about Tan Lee, he's going to be defending against Kai Tang. I've seen Tan Lee a lot, especially in the United States, and then in one championship. I looked up a couple fights on Kai Tang. No joke, man. Can kick, can punch, and carrying a lot of momentum off that last win earlier this year. Talk about that matchup.
Yeah, both of these guys are on a multiple fight win streak, and I think that I think for this matchup, this is going to come down to the mental strategy that's behind Tan Lee on this fight, like whether or not he's going to let a guy like Tang Kai get in his head, because Tang is like, he's very hot headed. I don't know if you heard of what he said after his last fight, but he said, "I'm going to kill that mother." Blink. And so he had some strong words to say. And then Tan's just so calm, cool, and collected. He's like, you know what? That energy is just going to bring the best version of me out. So he didn't seem to let any of that get under his skin. And I'm wondering if he's going to use that to try to get Tang Kai fired up so that he's emotionally charged, making mistakes. But nonetheless, these guys are each on 6 and 8 fight win streaks, and both of them love to throw hands. I would say that my assessment of the two of them is that Tan is a bit more well-rounded, so he has more avenues to win the fight. Being able to take Tang Kai down, like if it ends up on the ground, the fight is definitely in his favor. But Tang seems impossible to take down, and he's basically said like Tan's not going to be able to get me to the ground, and so I do believe that this may end up being primarily a stand-up match where these two are just throwing bombs at each other. And, each of these guys have trouble escaping the first round when they're winning matches.
Yeah.
Rich, I was just about to ask you about that. Those type of comments, they fire up the fans, right? But I've often wondered with fighters, when you were fighting your opponents, when they tried to talk trash or say these types of things, did it almost put them at a disadvantage? Like, in other words, you got to live up to what you're saying, right? Does that almost put pressure on you as a fighter? As the opponent, do you think, hey, this guy's now playing into my hands, my game plan here? How does all that psychological warfare work in your head?
Remember the old feud between Tito Ortiz and Ken Shamrock? And remember how Tito got Ken so fired up that Ken kind of like slapped the chair and threw it across the stage? Like, yeah. I don't believe that was for the audience, for the fans, to help hype the fight. Like, I think he was really underneath Ken's skin at that point in time. And so if you have the ability to, get on, like, even for example, like when I'm playing basketball, I'm not a great basketball player. I used to be decent, I guess. I'm like one of those guys that was formerly decent, but I will talk so much trash when I'm on the court because it's the only way that I can get an advantage playing the game. Like, I can just throw you off your game. And so when somebody is easily emotionally manipulated, then that's something that you definitely have to take advantage of. And I think that, I don't know if Tang is easily emotionally manipulated, or he just kind of brings that heat the entire time to something like this. But it can, if you let your opponent get to you, it can throw your game off, because in the circle, like when you're competing, you need to be cerebral. Like, you need to be thinking you think about this. You've spent weeks in camp perfecting or pursuing a certain strategy that you're going to try to unfold in this fight, and suddenly just to throw that out the door because you became emotionally charged is not a smart thing to do in a match. And if you can get your opponent to do that, then it's just a bigger advantage for you.
I did want to ask you a little bit about rematches. We talked about that. There are times when we watch a rematch and we feel like it's just a continuation of the first fight. In other words, we're just adding more rounds, even in a trilogy, right? But then there's sometimes where we just feel like we watched a completely different fight. What do you feel like here with Demetrious Johnson? Do we feel like extra rounds, or are we going to see a completely different fighter this time?
I think if I'm to make a prediction here, I think like the first round is going to feel like an extra round, because Adriano, his body type and fight style is a difficult matchup for Demetrious. And so both of these guys know what the other is capable of. And Adriano, obviously, he shocked the world last time. And to walk into the circle with the kind of confidence or swagger that, like, I'm just going to repeat, like, I'm going to take control of this match and keep going. Demetrious is not the kind of guy that you want to do that with. He's a strategist. He's going to come in with a new game plan. So I think there'll be a feeling out process for the first round. But Demetrious definitely is going to have to. I think his key to victory in this, if he's going to win the match, is to play with ranges and keep Adriano guessing, because Adriano is so tall and long with those arms and good striking. And so with that height disadvantage that Demetrious has, he's going to have to play with these ranges and get to the inside. So I do believe that the first round will probably be like a feeling out round.
Believe it or not, too, Rich, I feel like part of the therapeutic comeback for Demetrious Johnson, as great as he was, everything he accomplished, obviously that was a big loss he took against Adriano Moraes. But I noticed Rodtang's on this card as well. And he went straight into the fire, willing to strike with Rodtang in that hybrid rules fight. You know what I mean? Like not scared at all to like think, I'm just going to take him down and this and that. I mean, both guys went at each other's strength. It was really, really exciting. But tell me, like, what do you see with Demetrious? Do you see someone who's even thinking of that, or do you feel like he's gotten past it? A lot of fighters, when they lose a big match, they always wonder, will they be the same? And I think Demetrious will be just as strong or even better.
Yeah, I do too. Especially as a fighter ages, one thing that you gain is experience and knowledge as you get older. And if you, at this stage of Demetrious's career, and I'm saying this kind of tongue in cheek because I know DJ, at this stage of his career, if he hasn't learned how to deal properly with a loss and utilize what useful information you can from that loss and discard the rest and move on, then I don't think he would be in the position that he's in, having, as many title defenses and the accolades, everything that he's accomplished in his career. Like, you have to get to a point where you can take a loss and move on with something like that. And so I do believe that he's going to be able to come in this fight and kind of, with a clean slate mentally, so to speak, and perform at a top level where he's not like, afraid to pull the trigger, so to speak.
And since we brought him up, let's talk about Rodtang. He's facing Savas Michael. So this is just straight Muay Thai. Mm-hmm. And can you tell us a little bit about Savas Michael? The whole world knows about Rodtang, and he is.
Well, I'll say this. What's interesting about this is that this is the Grand Prix that's actually leading to Rodtang's belt. And Rodtang felt like he didn't want to just sit around and wait for the Grand Prix to end. So he's like, I'll just jump in the Grand Prix too. So he put himself in the Grand Prix to compete against his own title. So it could end up being that he wins the Grand Prix to fight himself. But this opponent that he has with Savas Michael, like this when I think of Rodtang, I think of things like precision. And we see Rodtang in the ring with when he'll let a guy, you've seen him like where he gets clipped with a punch and then he stands there and lets a guy hit him or something as if he's reckless. But he's not really. Like, these make great clips and they fire the audience up. But Rodtang's a very, very calculated and precise fighter. When you look at a guy like Savas Michael, like, this guy's coming in, he's tough. And I think that the danger here for Rodtang is that Rodtang could think that he is a level above Savas Michael, but this is the kind of guy, he could be the dark horse of the tournament and somebody that you just cannot overlook. And if Rodtang's made that strategic error of thinking like, oh, I'm just going to walk through the first person in this bracket because he's the champ anyway, that could be the beginning of his demise with somebody like Savas Michael.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, when I first pulled up, when I was looking up Savas Michael, the first picture that came up reminded me of Chris Hordesky. I don't know if you remember him back in the IFL days. And he had kind of like he looked like a young guy, like a kid fighting men. And then sure enough, I start to look more into him and they call him the babyface killer. But yeah, he's no joke, man. He looks like he's pretty tough. Thank you for talking About this,
when
Graham.
you when you look at a picture of him, you think like, oh man, this young kid's getting fed to the lions here. But then when you start looking at his rap sheet, you're like, oh, this is not what it appears at face value.
Yeah. Man, it's great. You know, we have these cards are like 12 hours apart, and then the new platform of Amazon Prime. That's incredible. Did you say that's the one that you're going to be calling the fights, or are you going to be calling the fights on the earlier one?
No, I'll be calling the fights on the Prime Video card. They'll air in the US. It's got to be what?
That's got to be exciting. I mean, a whole new different platform, a whole new different audience is going to be watching. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, this is our first event on Prime Video. We're really excited as a company, really excited because this opens up. You know, I mean, Prime Video has 200 plus million subscribers, and so this is our first real foray into the US. So it'll be available on Prime Video for the US and Canadian markets. And so this is going to open things up for us. And obviously, this is just the beginning of us actually stepping into the US with plans for 2023 next year.
And to be clear, will you be on all Prime Videos telecasts going forward, or just this one? Because it's being the first one.
I'm not really sure. That'll depend on the production team and whether they want to bring me down for each of the cards. And I'm working on so many other things. Like I'm working on like commission work, not in the US, but in other areas globally as well. So I have a lot of things that are on my plate otherwise for the company. But yeah, I will. My plan is to commentate on as many of these Prime Video cards, if not all of them, as possible.
Well, that'll be awesome. And folks, on the 26th, 8 a.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, it's One Championship 160 with the Lee and Tang fight as the main event. Later that night, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, on Amazon Prime Video, that will be the card featuring Adriano Moraes versus Demetrious Johnson. It is a rematch of the matchup they had last year. It's called One on Prime Video 1.
Real quick correction on you, because you got a little mixed up on your matches. It's Christian Lee versus Okray Yoon, and it's Tan Lee versus Tang Kai. Those are the two championship bouts on the 160 card that's on the Asia side. So okay. It's not Lee versus Tang. It's Lee versus Okray Yoon, and it's Christian Lee versus Okray Yoon and Tan Lee versus Tang Kai.
Got it. Yep. Got it. All right. Thank you for correcting that. And thanks, Rich, for your time as always.
Awesome. I appreciate you guys having me on. Always fun chatting with you.